Hello, adventuresses. Today is a fun topic because we've definitely seen this question asked in the group a few times. And so that's why we have a whole lot of information for you guys today. And before I dive into our topic, okay, which is basically tipping etiquette. Okay, how much should you tip? Should you tip? Is it different in different countries? In the US, tipping is like a thing, but in Europe it's not really a thing. So how does that all work? And Uta is now joining us as well. So hello, Uta.
Hi, girls. Sorry for being a little late.
Yes. So before I dive in, I want to share because I just got this in the mail.
Nice.
And it's super big. And I have to say, it's the most beautiful book that we've done. The pictures are pretty and so yeah. Basically, you can get this for free on our website if you haven't already, the Horse Riding in Every State and Country book. I think as a paperback, it's super cool. But you can get the ebook for free on our website at equestrianadventuresses.com. But yeah, this is basically 1,000+ stables in every state and every country. And you can even find tours based on the type of horses they have, or your budget, or the terrain, or the pace. Yeah, all kinds of cool things. So definitely grab that. I just got this one in the mail, and I'm like, wow, it looks so prettyful. I don't know if on the video if it looks as nice, but it's really cool. So I'm super excited about that. Yeah. So today, tipping. Uta, let's start with you because you have a horse trail business. So what's your take on tipping?
Oh, tipping is so difficult because I think every nation and every national has their own tipping routine, I guess. Me coming from Germany, we Germans don't tip that much. I know in America it's a big thing. Everyone tips. Americans usually tip a lot more generously than all the other nations. Japanese people sometimes don't tip at all. Germans sometimes don't tip at all. It's really difficult. And a lot of times people ask me, how much should we tip? And I'm also sometimes like, okay. So I usually try to work out a little bit how many people are there. So I tell them, look, we have so and so many people, just divide it up. And I usually tell them, just pool everything together and put it in an envelope, give it to me or give it to anyone else responsible. And then we divide everything because we know the operator usually knows how many people are included in the whole venture and the whole operation and the whole trail ride, because sometimes there's people in the background who are working who don't really have a lot of contact, and even they are happy if they get some tip. So, but it's very difficult for me. Also, sometimes I usually tell them, okay, you can give. If they give too much, it's not good. If they give too little, it's also not good. So it's always very difficult.
Tipping is something that in North America is kind of a given. I think there's lots of places that really, the workers rely on the tips because the salaries are low. They're really relying on that those funds. But you're absolutely right. In other parts of the world, tipping is either included in your price, and a lot of times you'll see, gratuity included, which is really good. But reading the fine print on your packaging that you're getting from your tour operator, those kind of things will also give you an idea of how much, or if tipping is required, and how much you should give. Because like you said, Uta, there are so many people kind of working behind the scenes that you may not even see, that do need to be rewarded for good service.
Yeah, exactly. And particularly as you want, everyone to be happy. So the worst thing is if somebody tips individually and then the staff starts squabbling and quarreling and, fighting, like he got more and I didn't get. And that's really a bad thing. Nobody wants that, this infighting. So that's always difficult to keep everyone happy.
I think so. One of the mistakes, I've always been on the other side. I've worked as a trail guide once in my life. But in Bhutan, I started a horse riding, the first and only horse riding program in that whole country. And so we brought a couple of groups of equestrian adventuresses. And the biggest mistake that people will think is, so Bhutan is maybe special because they have a tourism day fee. In order to enter the country, you have to pay $300 a day. Okay, so the price of traveling around in Bhutan, it adds up very quickly. And the money goes towards the Bhutanese government, like for fixing roads and providing education. So a lot of people will assume, like, oh man, I'm paying all this money, I don't have to tip the people. Well, it's actually not the case, because the tourism agency basically purposefully, maybe not purposefully, but let's just say they don't exactly pay their staff huge bundles of cash, because most of the money goes to the government, the tourism agency themselves, they get their fees. And then, they do have a salary for the staff, but they kind of rely, and the agency sort of assumes that their guides and workers are going to get tipped. So they kind of factor that in. So if you weren't to tip them, I mean, it's like they're not getting any money. So basically what we did as a group, I think the first time I was there with 8 people, the second time it was a small group, it was just a couple of us. But I said, okay, let's all put our money into a pot, and I'm going to give it to the guide. He's my big brother. I know he's going to be responsible with the money. And then he divvied it up amongst all of the workers, because there was a lot of people involved. There was guys that we didn't even see who had to carry our stuff. It's a point-to-point ride, so we were camping in the wilderness, but they had the tents and stuff set up when we arrived. It was very like luxury in that sense. So somebody, because there's no roads up there, somebody had to load it onto the mountain ponies, like pack horses, and chase them up the mountain and walk on foot and unpack and then cook for so he kind of divvied up the tip money based on what he knows of their culture and how much money they should be making, and based on their work and who's in charge and all that stuff. So that was just the easiest solution for us, was to just pool it all into a basket, and then divvy up that pot from there.
I found some research, or I did some research on, a variety of countries throughout the world, and I thought I would share that. So Australia, for example, not expected to tip at the end of a riding holiday. It really is. Tipping isn't really as big a thing there, like we said, North America is. Japan, another place, very little tipping. Some of the research that I did had indicated that if you want to show your gratitude, a gift rather than a tip. And that's something that I have often done when I have been traveling, is I'll take, if I know I'm going to be at 5 places, I'll maybe take 5 traditional Canadian things. So, maple syrup is always a really easy one, because Canada's known for that. And you can pick up little small bottles, and pretty much everywhere you go, they eat pancakes or waffles or something. And you'd hope that, they would remember when they go to have some syrup on their pancakes, they would remember us. Something else unique about Japan, which I think probably falls into some other countries as well, is if you do choose to give cash to someone, to place it in an envelope, not just handing them the bills. Mongolia, this is another one. Your tips, your gratuities are going to be included in your price. So it is going to be an all-inclusive price. So you don't need to worry about scrounging around for spare cash at the end of the ride. If you wanted to say a special thank you to a specific person, making a non-monetary gift to them, or just simply saying, hey, can I have your email so we can stay in touch, or let's become Facebook friends, and that's really a valuable non-monetary gift. Kenya, they really just want to make everybody happy, and presenting a present from the heart really is, only if you're really super happy with the service provided. There is no hard and fast rules what you have to give. Just, in some cases, even a sheer thank you, it is enough. I know, we've talked about North America quite a bit. Canada and the US, it's pretty standard, anywhere from 10 to 20%. Lots of the tour operators will give you a breakdown. It's the expectation is $10 a day, and that money will be divvied up amongst the staff. Again, putting it into an envelope at the end of the ride. Obviously, cash is best. You don't, it's, at the end, can I put my gratuity on my credit card? Well, that might not be feasible. If you're, they may not have one of those little machines there, right? So, so you do want to kind of take that into consideration. Now, Uta, you had mentioned Germany, but what are any ideas of what other countries in Europe are doing for tipping?
Usually, when you're in Europe, you either tip or sometimes you have it included already in your bill. Like that's of course not for the horse riding, but if you go to restaurants and stuff, Italy, for instance, in a lot of places you have on the bill you have a service, service charge. On the other hand, in Europe, it's customary to tip. Not much, but little bit. So if you go like for restaurants or stuff, you usually tip like 10% or maybe a little less, depends on what you had and how the prices generally are. So Europe usually tips, but not that much, and not, I guess, that regular, not that much basically, but still we do tip.
I did find that South America was in a lot of the places, Argentina, Brazil, the standard was about 10%, customary to give. But again, tipping is really a personal thing. It isn't mandatory. It's something that unless it's pre-billed, it isn't mandatory, right? Like you said, on a lot of, if you're in a restaurant, the gratuity, might say service charges include, gratuities included, or give you a sample, 18, 20, or 22% percent right on the bill, and you pick which amount you want. I did find an interesting little article on, things to consider before tipping, to make your thought process, if you weren't sure, who you wanted to tip or those kind of things. But, did the guide take an interest in me as a person? Did the guide go out of their way, his or her way, to make sure I had a great time? Were they skilled at what they did? Did they have good knowledge of the area, natural and cultural resources? Did they have a good service, a strong service ethic? Was it clear that their actions were focused on the guests having a super time rather than, the guide's personal motives? And I think that that's a big one, right? Because if, we've all experienced that, whether it be a tour guide or anyone in the service industry, you kind of know if they love their job or not. And the people that love their job will go out of their way to make sure that you're having a great time, because that's their, that's what they want to do. They love their job. They love sharing the things about their job, whether it's when you're out on a ride and they're telling you about, this river, blah, 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 or, this castle was famous because of XYZ. Or you have the ones that are like, and we're going to canter now. And then, the only time you hear them is when you're changing speeds. So, there's good with both. However, the ones that are actively engaged in making sure you're having a good time, because ultimately, you've paid a lot of money and you're there on a holiday. You're there to have a good time, not be, okay, I'll just sit and be quiet and ride my horse. So I think those are kind of some things that when you're tipping to consider.
Definitely.
So, sorry, Crystal.
Well, you can go ahead, Heather.
I did find one thing, or a few things in my past ones. Obviously, the envelope, putting cash into that. Having the local currency is also handy. U.S. dollars go everywhere, and local currency, obviously. Lots of people think Canadian money looks like funny money, monopoly money, because it's all different colors. Now the euro is different colors as well, but the Canadian money always people thought was, looked like monopoly money or Canadian Tire money.
Look at our rupees. We have them in all different colors, including pink.
Oh wow.
That's a new 2,000 rupee note. It came in pink. So I don't know how many, when it came out new, how many people made a picture with them, because they were quite rare in the beginning. So they posted it on Facebook because of this bright pink color.
I can say from experience in India, make sure you're not paying with counterfeit money.
Yeah, although the new notes are pretty good, they're pretty difficult to forge. So I think nowadays they got it right now. Let's say I think we have very little old notes now because they took out all the 1,000 rupee notes and 500 rupee notes out of circulation. So it's much harder to forge now.
Okay, well that's good because it was different when I was there.
Yeah, I remember those times. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be awful to give, fantastic time on my trip.
Yeah.
Here's some fake money.
You know, in India, when you get that counterfeit and you're like, dang it, like they got me today, you know? It's definitely happened. So for my experience, I want to say in male-dominated countries, by the way, a lot of men abuse money for partying. If it is at all possible to tip the women, tip their wives or give their kids toys, or, you know, like you said, it doesn't have to be money. Give them little toys or something. Give them notebooks or pens and pencils for school, or, you know, whatever it is. I've definitely noticed that women are smarter when they get tipped, when they get the money, than some of the men in some of the countries. Obviously not every country, but that's definitely something worth thinking about. Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely right. That's one of the reasons I'm always saying everyone, like, pull the tip, give it to me, because we divide the tip with the staff at the end when everything is back, you know, when we are all back in the when all the horses are back, when all the stuff and things are back as well, because sometimes if they get cash beforehand and we are somewhere where there's, you know, some way of spending it, we had a couple of times that people disappeared, and of course you know where they disappear to, right? They disappear somewhere to get some alcohol, or, you know, just having a good time. So it's actually, you're unfortunately very right there, Crystal. It's something men, particularly I think in the lower earning segment, sometimes in third world countries, and I think in other countries as well, fall victim to.
Yeah, they just don't have that foresight, and they don't really think about, you know, oh, my family needs the money or whatever. It seems like such basic things to us, but yeah, if you give the money to the women, like you know that it'll be fine.
Yeah, that's everywhere the case.
Yeah. So.
Women think of the family more, I guess. When men are just a little bit less. They are more thinking of themselves in general. Again, it's, of course, there's exceptions.
Yeah, no, definitely.
I do think, though, as you're planning, you know, as things are opening up and how exciting that is, we're going to get to go on horse riding holidays. You know, no, okay, I'm doing a 6-day ride. It's probably going to be, you know, if the thought is, you know, 10 or 20% of, you know, of your package, for example, or if you want to do $10 or $20 a day, is having that, you know, have that money in the envelope when you arrive, and, you know, tuck it away in your suitcase. So on the last day, it's ready to go, instead of the night before. And, oh my goodness, I only have, you know, 350s, or I only, you know, to be prepared. Again, you know, in your documents that you receive from your tour operator, if a gratuity is expected at the end, they're going to indicate what it is, or, you know, the percentage, or the amount per day. Again, putting it in an envelope, being somewhat discreet about it, because, you know, you could be handing over, you know, if you're giving $200 and someone else is giving, you know, all of a sudden this person's got, you know, maybe $600, you know, 3 envelopes easily goes in the pocket, but, you know, 600 loose in cash, those kind of places. And, you know, depending on whereabouts you are, you know, they may be at hot for being, you know, being robbed or those kind of things. So, you know, definitely keep that into consideration. You know, for me, a lot of it is about the quality of service. Like I always, you know, I'll make you go to a restaurant and it's just kind of expected. Even when you go to pay and they give you the little credit card machine, that's the first thing that pops up. Are you tipping? And then it gives you, do you want to do dollar or percentage? And I've noticed in the past, it used to be like 10, 12, 15, and now it's like 18, 20, 22. If you aren't happy with the service and you don't tip, is that, should you be telling them, well, you were really slow. You only brought me one drink. You didn't, you didn't check to see if my food wasn't cooked right. The unfortunate side of it is if by not tipping, you're affecting so many other people, the girl that works at the counter or with horse riding, the girl that makes the reservations and the person that feeds the horses and the person that tacks up the horses, they're not getting that benefit of the gratuity if you don't tip just because you got bad service from the guide kind of thing. So those are a few things that I have kind of come across before.
I mean, in North America, like you said, it's part of our culture. So Christian is here with me in America now. And it's so funny. We went to a fast food thing last night. Don't judge me. And we went to a fast food thing. And for some reason, their thing was broke or whatever, but we didn't know it. And so, like, it took us, 15 minutes to get our food, which in America is like, what? Like, we're going to start throwing eggs at them or something. But yeah, we're so, Christian the whole time, because I'm always talking about, like, customer service in America. And, he's German. He's like, what's that? But yeah, so he was just making fun of me the whole time. Like, there's no customer service in America. But we're definitely raised here with this, like, let's say, standard of what we think customer service is. And for some reason, and this is something I want to mention, it's kind of, we're sort of believed that we're allowed to be a-holes sometimes. Because if we make a drama, we'll get our way and, things will be free, or we won't have to pay for this, or we'll get this benefit. And I actually had a really good friend. She worked on a cruise line and she's Austrian. And she said all of her customers were American. And she said she was, unfortunately, the job was dealing with the complaints. And she said, it was a European cruise line. So she's like, I get all these Americans and they're coming and complaining, trying to make drama and trying to get free stuff. And she's like, we're a European cruise line. Like, we don't have customer service. So she's like, I would just listen to their complaints and be like, oh, that's nice. Like, what do you want me to do about it? But she was like, oh man, I was so tired of how much drama some of them made sometimes. So I do want to mention, like, yes, there is, of course, some standards and customer service and blah, blah, all of that. I also would like to mention that we don't have to be a-holes and
right.
that we can also be polite and understand that we are in a different culture. We are in like, things might not be exactly what we think it needs to be, because in America, we can make that drama or whatever. Like, in some places, like, that just doesn't really exist. Like, they don't know. I will say, like, in Bhutan, it's like the people are just so friendly, or in Ireland, like, people are so friendly. It's like above and beyond just their normal nature, but it's not like that everywhere. Maybe in some places they are a little bit less friendly, or they are a little bit skeptical looking of foreigners, or, whatever it is. So yeah, I would say sometimes if there's cultural things or cultural differences, like, sometimes maybe it's not about making a drama. It's just, you're there experiencing what this new culture is. So yeah, I would definitely like for people to also think about being friendly back.
Yes, absolutely. A smile goes a long way.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
And manners, the please and thank you go a long way. I have, I always, our guide that I'll have on a ride, I have like tiny bladder syndrome. So I'm always like, I have to go to the bathroom. And of course I pick these big monster horses that I want to ride that I sometimes need a boost to get back on. And, I've been so fortunate that the guides that we've had, they hop off their horse and help you get back on. And I think that sometimes we forget that it's service like that makes your, if you know that, okay, well, it's not a big deal if they have to hop off and give me a boost back on. They may be thinking in their head, oh my God, Heather has to pee again. But, you know, never once do you see that face of, okay, yeah, I got to get off. Well, can you find a rock to get on kind of thing? So I think that tipping, you know, when you go to a gas station in the wintertime and the guy fills your car and it's too cold to get out, he's the one you should be tipping, because, you know, he did a service for you. And, you know, the guy that gives you, or the gal that gives you a boost back on your horse, they're the ones that deserve it. Because, you know, really it is a service that you need, or well, that I need specifically, because, you know, big horse, short legs. But yeah, I think that tipping is something that is super important. Knowing how much you want to tip, being prepared, you know, having the cash, those kind of things, and just, you know, and being aware of, you know, if you are in Australia, that it's not, you know, tipping is not something that they're interested in, you know, that's not a policy or a way of life there. And that, you know, maybe a little gift from your country might be worth way more than an extra $5 kind of thing. So those would be great tips from me.
I will say too, and I have a maybe a story that can go with this, but again, from the perspective of someone, I was a guide for a brief time. Okay, I was always a show jumper, always worked at professional yards, didn't have to deal with people so much. I was working with horses. And in this time that I was a trail guide and I really saw from the inside the industry, I want to say the guides and the people in charge, it's like it's something that as someone who isn't in the industry, to kind of explain to them all of the stuff that goes on in the background that you don't see. I mean, even like you're a puppet master, you know, you have 10 horses, you know that these two, if they get next to each other, are going to try and kick at each other. You know that this horse, if it goes down a little dip, it tries and do a little crow hop, or you know that this horse does that, or this does this. And then you have all these people with all these different personalities, and you have to like match them on the correct personality horse that does the correct thing. And you have to slow down at this part of the trail where that dip is so that horse doesn't crow hop, and then you have to speed up here so that the adrenaline junkies have a nice canter. And there's like so many moving parts involved, and a lot of it, I mean, they don't think about it. They don't know, like you said, you're there on a holiday for a week, but you're not seeing all of the training and all of the work that goes into the horses, or all of the behind the scenes stuff, or the guys who had to chase the pack horses up the mountain to get your tent all ready, you know. So there's a whole lot of stuff. And I remember I was in Greece, and the lady there who owns the stables, she's so lovely. But, you know, this is Greece. It's not like I don't know. The people are staying in these like resort hotels. So they're sleeping in the resorts and they're coming to the stables every day. And the stables is functional. It's not like a 5-star or whatever. And one of the ladies was complaining on day one because she had to tack up her own horse. And she was like grumbling, like, I can't believe why am I doing this? This is my vacation. And the girl who owns the stables was kind of shocked, because she's like, well, actually, most people that come here really enjoy spending the time with the horses. Like, they really like that. And, you know, it's just me and myself and I, like, it's hard to tack up 10 horses by myself. So, you know, she was really panicking. And so after that, she was like waking up at like 3 a.m. to make sure that this darn lady's horse was ready. But, you know, I think sometimes we do take for granted, like, how much of a puppet master these trail guides are. So, you know, from experience as a trail guide for a brief time in my life, I never, ever, ever got tipped. And man, if I would have gotten tipped, I probably would have kept being a trail guide, because it was a cool job otherwise. The pay was not, but if I had gotten tipped, that might have made up for it. So.
Yeah, well, and you made a great point before when you talked about how Bhutan has the tourism tax. I really, a lot of people just don't realize, well, they think that, well, what I paid goes into all of that, when in fact it doesn't. You know, it's the tax, you know, that's the way the government gets their money. So yeah. No, it's definitely, I mean, Bhutan is one of those rare places, because they did not allow foreigners into their country until like 30 years ago. So that's their way of kind of limiting how many people come into their country, because they don't want an overflow of tourism, and which I think is cool. And then your money is going to help pay for their schools and roads and things like that. But yeah, that means that you're going to have to fork out a little extra money to tip the people. So definitely, like, do a little bit of research, or just honestly ask before you show up. Like, hey, what's appropriate? What's the norm?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome. Well, this was a very, I think, informative little exercise.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I enjoyed this. And definitely, if you guys haven't already, make sure you go to the website and, that way you have places to tip. You can find
Things are
this.
opening up. We're going to get traveling again right away. So use the book to pick your destination.
Yes, exactly. And if you don't know which place, because there's too many good ones, just like open a random page and just go for it. Yeah,
exactly.
Just close your eyes, open the book, horse riding in every state and country, and then there you go. That's my mission for you guys. So thank you guys so much for joining me. If you were watching live, let us know if you guys have any tipping experiences yourself that you want to share with us, or any other questions. Yeah, we always love hearing from you guys. And then also let us know if you have other topics which you are interested in hearing about. If you're listening to this on our podcast or our YouTube, like just comment, send us an email. Like, we're very easy to find. Reach out to us in our Facebook group. And yeah, we always love hearing from you guys. So thank you guys, and we will see you next week.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Bye.